Here we go, another episode of The Rundown. Welcome, everyone. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News, and we are the news division of United Network. And our focus is on bringing you the real news. And we do that through lots of content that we release throughout the week. We have in-depth news coverage that the team and I work on for you. So we take stories that are kind of making headlines right now. We expand upon what's really going on. We have local stories as told through our amazing field messengers. We talk about the restoration of our planet and how we're creating what we call the new Earth, as well as reports from the Global Intelligence Agency of what's happening on the ground in what I consider to be a huge battle between good and evil. And most of the evil is gone, but it's convincing humans that were working for the dark side that they are no longer in control. And it's this whole shift of power going on, and it is topsy-turvy, which is why, a lot of these headlines that you see in mainstream media and even in alternative media, it just doesn't make sense. It's like the narrative's this, and then it switches, and it's like you're living in this crazy time. And if you feel that way, it's because, yes, you are living in a crazy time, but it is a beautiful time as well, at least if you're on the light side. And amazing things are happening not only to our amazing planet and within our planet, but within ourselves. And humanity is changing for the better. And we like to reveal that in the reports that we give you guys and, just let you know what's going on because you're not crazy, but the world is. And here you are, smack dab in the middle of it. If you want more information about who we are and what we do, visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. This podcast is a week in review. So I go through the top stories that we release throughout the week because, like I said, we do release a lot of content. And that's a great opportunity for you guys to determine, based on what's talked about in the podcast, if you missed anything, if you want to go back and watch something. And also, if you want to share this with other people, we would encourage that as well because we are primarily member-based. Okay, so we're subscription-based platform, but we do release our content on YouTube and Rumble, the videos that we produce. We release them on YouTube and Rumble a week after they're released to our members. So if you want instant access to all that good stuff, again, all that information is on our website. You can also just catch these podcast episodes and get an overview. So a week after, you know what content you want to check out on YouTube and Rumble. So you can use it in lots of different ways. With all the information that we give to you guys, we believe it's important that you think critically about everything. And if some stuff doesn't make sense to you, maybe it requires a little bit of extra research because a lot of information can be found online if you know where to look and if you know what questions to ask. Is there censorship? Yeah, of course there is. But you can still do a little bit of digging to help make maybe the puzzle pieces fit just a little bit better. And ask questions, through our app. You can ask questions through our app. Sometimes we do these live Q&As. Kim does for the Global Intelligence Agency reports. We're trying to do those more often. So ask questions. People in our community are great at answering questions as well. People that have been around and, part of UNN for a long time, they'll help out as well. Because this is how we all grow. This is how we all learn. And then once you have that information and you firmly believe something, then share that with other people. Because like I said, everything is changing right now. And sometimes it's hard for people to kind of wrap their head around what's going on because we were never really told the truth. So it's hard for anyone, that whole cognitive dissonance sets in when you tell someone that pretty much everything you've been told is a lie. That's a slight exaggeration, but not really, right? And you have to rebuild everything from scratch. And that's a very vulnerable place to be. And I think that's why you are awake and aware now. We like to say here at UNN that we're creating a soft place for people to land because everyone's going to be going through this process on some level. We're all in different levels, if you will. Our journeys are just different. No one's better than anyone else. It's just we have different lifetimes, different experiences. And we're all here now at the same time. And I believe that is by design. Whatever your gifts and your talents are, you chose to be here at this time and you're here. And if you're listening to this podcast, then you kind of have an idea at the very least that things aren't what we've been told, right? So now the big question is, what are you going to do about it? Hopefully you share this information and you help with the restoration of our planet. So no real announcements for you guys today. Let's just hop into this. I know we've got a bunch of stories we got to get through. So here are the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. Let's talk about our field messenger reports. Of course, these are videos in their original format, guys. So as I go through this, you're going to realize, wow, it's great to have the description, but really with a lot of these videos, you really just have to see them because there are places and things and video just really helps. Nonetheless, I'm going to go through these and give you a better idea of what our field messenger program is all about. So field messengers are everyday people. They're just like you, and they care about their communities. And we believe that the best way to grow closer together and to make sure that no one's trying to hijack a narrative, which I don't know if you've noticed, happens a lot in traditional media, then we need to be sharing our own stories, telling our own stories of things that we know because we see it firsthand, and sharing that with other people. And that's what our field messengers are all about. So you don't have to know something about what's going on the other side of the world personally. You know what's going on in your backyard with the people that live near you, with the issues that matter most to those people. And that's what we're hoping that you share with us. And you don't have to know anything about editing or anything like that. We put the stories together for you. We just ask that you tell us what you saw. And actually, this first story is a fantastic example of that. So this is from Vahagan, and he is out of Los Angeles. He's actually part of the UNN production team. You've probably seen him on the Telegram chat for our field messengers. And Vahagan does a really great job of doing exactly what field messengers are supposed to do. And this is about the fire update of what he saw as someone who lived, I think he said within 10 minutes of some of those fires in the Los Angeles area. I'm sure you guys have heard about that. They started in early January, and there have been fires here and there, very large fires. A lot of people have lost their homes. And so Vahagan just reports on what he saw in his area, what he smelled. I know that sounds a little bit strange, but he was talking about the fires and how it still smelled very fresh. He was able to talk to some people about their personal experience, and he shares that with us in this report. So again, it's not about knowing all sides of a story or whatever. It's going to the place, whatever you're reporting on, and just sharing your own perspective, your honest perspective of what you see, hear, feel. That's what being a field messenger is all about. And he actually got a little bit of footage of some of the fire. Most of it was put out, but he also showed there was an active fire kind of in the distance that he was able to show. Just show us what you can from your perspective. That's all it is. All right, Louise from Australia. She talks about this planned hydroelectric project that is causing a lot of debate and environmental concern. Okay, so you would think green energy, hydroelectricity, that sounds like a good thing. But what are you taking away from a community in order to build this? These are the kinds of questions that we need to be asking, because there's a lot of, I'm just going to call it greenwashing going on, right? Where something is promoted as being good for the environment, but it's not really when you look at all facets of what it's going to take to get this project off the ground. And you have to consider who all it impacts, right, in the community. So in this case, and I believe Louise talked to some of the people that lived in the area as well, there is a lot of concern because you need a large area, and she actually shows us the area that they're considering for this project. And there's a lot of wildlife that are native to this area in Australia. It's actually in Queensland. And they would be wiped out. And some of these animals, some of this wildlife you can't find in other places. So this is what I'm talking about. Hydroelectricity sounds like a good thing, but if you're going to wipe out a whole ecosystem, that doesn't sound very positive, right? And this is what her report's about. Paul out of South Australia takes us to this national park called Flinders Ranges. And it's something, I believe he went there with his wife, but it's just beautiful. This is one of those reports that you really have to see. Me describing it isn't going to do very much good, but it's beautiful. Lots of flora and fauna, breathtaking geological formations that literally date back millions of years. And Paul is showing us the natural beauty of this area. He says there's hiking trails and lots of areas for bushwalking. That's a term I had to look up. Wasn't sure what bushwalking is. I had an idea. So, and our Australian friends are going to have to correct me if I still don't fully comprehend this. But I was trying to figure out what's the difference between hiking and bushwalking. And at least according to the internet, hiking is more intentional. It may involve long walks and equipment and things like that. And bushwalking is going for a jaunt, but not necessarily with a lot of paths and trails. It's like going out in nature, and it's the term's used a lot in Australia. So I hope I did the term justice, but apparently this national park is great for bushwalking. Okay, Monica from Romania takes us to Zoe's Gardens. Again, another great video to actually watch. But these gardens are amazing. And it's in, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, Banpatok, Romania. And the gardens were designed by an Italian entrepreneur. It spans 7 hectares and it combines the beauty of nature. And boy, this guy was really, really creative. And Monica she gives us the backstory, right? So this man was a grandfather and he had a granddaughter named Zoe, which is why it's called Zoe's Gardens. But he was so creative. And this is without having like a formal education in architecture. You know, I'm not sure what classes you would take nowadays in order to know how to do things like this. But this was just his inspiration, his creativity, his imagination. And it's absolutely gorgeous. So there you go. You really should watch it. It's really beautiful. And there's like these benches and stuff along the way. What a nice opportunity just to go out and just enjoy, you know, nature and this man's creativity. Clive out of Australia takes us to the Kandanga Farm Store, which is right outside of Brisbane, Australia. It is a charming country shop with a focus on farm to fork. So that's interesting. I've heard of farm to table, but never farm to fork. But I like that because I'm a big fan of alliteration. So they are all about producing food without chemicals. And he interviewed one of the ladies that works there. And I believe her and her husband own the shop. That's what I want to say. But she has a funny story because she came from the city and she's like, I just married a farmer. And suddenly they've got this shop, but she's learned so much in the process. And I really think that's a great example of where humanity is at right now. A lot of us come from cities. I came from a, suburb. Like we, didn't have a ton of farms around us. I was not in that kind of environment. But the more I learn about sustainable living, the more I want to be in that kind of environment where I'm working directly with animals and everything's done as naturally as possible. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful store, beautiful story of how all this came to be. And like I said, I think it's really where humanity is at right now. We're all going to be getting this huge lesson on how to live more naturally. And who knows what other stores are going to pop up as a result. So Maya out of Italy takes us to the Tulip Spring Festival. This is held every spring in the region of Umbria, Italy. That's how I'm going to say it. And the whole community really bursts into life with color, also excitement when it is Tulip Spring Festival, when that's going on. And so she takes us to this festival. There were a lot of bands. They even had some floats. There was this dragon thing, and actually like smoke was coming out of the nostrils, like really elaborate floats. She says it lasts 5 to 7 days, and it's just a way for the community to get together and appreciate something as simple as a tulip, as a flower, right? Amy out of New Jersey, which is a state in the U.S., shows us how to make her turkey celery soup. And this is something she makes from scratch. And I really appreciate Amy's recipe stories because, and I think I said this last week, she made orange sorbet. Was that last week? I can't remember. But my girls are learning how to make a lot of things from scratch. And she gives me through her reports, Amy's, giving me all these ideas. I'm like, oh, we should really start making our soup from scratch. This actually came up the other day. We were at the grocery store and we found this really good soup, but it was powder and you just add water and that just doesn't seem right to me. I mean, it tastes really good, but more and more we're trying to make things from scratch. And so who knows, maybe we'll, try this turkey celery soup. It looked amazing and it looked pretty easy to make too, if you guys are looking for an easy recipe. Klaus from Austria takes us to Lower Austria. This is another one of those you really need to see, one of those videos. It is a stunning area. It's a wine region, so you've got vineyards everywhere. I always thought it'd be really cool to live on a vineyard. I just think I don't know if it's the very straight rows. I don't know what it is. It's just, I think vineyards are so beautiful. And this is a place with a lot of vineyards. And he's just sharing his part of the world with us, which again, is what being a field messenger is all about. All right, Yasuko from Japan is a photographer, and this story is about something called crown shyness. If you haven't heard of this term before, you should probably do a little bit of research on this because it is fascinating. So this occurs naturally out in nature where the tops of the trees, like if you were to look up kind of like a canopy, right? Look up at the trees. It looks like the trees are avoiding touching each other. It almost looks like there's a line around it, so you could trace it or something. So this is something that they do to avoid any kind of, overcrowding or issues because it allows these gaps, it allows the sun to come through. It's great for the ground and other microorganisms. It's really just plants helping each other out. It's like they have this own network and they're like, my branch is going to go this way. Why doesn't your branch go that way? And it sounds kind of silly when you say it that way, but it's a giant puzzle, like when you look into the sky, and they call it crown shyness. And Yasuko is a photographer that she says she loves taking pictures of this. She feels like the trees actually tell her when to, actually take the picture, which is just really cool because we know trees can communicate and they have this very extensive root system where they really tell the history of our land. So very cool story. And again, visuals, guys, the visuals are amazing with this one. All right, moving on to our in-depth stories that the team and I have been working on for you guys, and we released this week. We kick things off with something called the 340B program, which is a U.S.-based program. It was designed to help low-income and uninsured patients by requiring drug companies to offer discounts on outpatient medications to hospitals and clinics. You know where I'm going with this, right? It's designed for one thing, at least that's what they tell us, but it's used for something completely different. A New York Times investigation has revealed that hospitals and corporations are exploiting the program for profit, buying drugs at deep discounts and then charging patients and insurers inflated prices.
The 340B program has been around since 1992, and it was put into place to make sure that people can afford drugs they need for their serious conditions. Pharmaceutical companies must sell their product at upwards of a 50%, sometimes higher discount to a lot of hospitals, largely not-for-profit hospitals. The problem is that hospitals are not passing along those discounts to the patients who need them. They're taking those 340B drugs and they're selling them at full price to insured, more affluent Americans and denying the opportunity for uninsured, less fortunate Americans to have access to the care that they need. Hospitals are charging patients higher prices, even though they bought the drugs at lower prices. They're oftentimes prescribing more expensive drugs so they can play the spread between the 340B price and the full price, which oftentimes insurance will reimburse. And a government accounting office study recently showed that as this program gets increasingly warped, more patients who have insurance are being charged more, and patients without insurance are having no access to these products whatsoever. So moving from a program that was designed to make sure that more patients who without insurance have access to these drugs, it's moved to become a profit center.
Oh boy. Apexis, the for-profit company managing the program, also benefits significantly, earning fees on nearly every transaction and advising hospitals on maximizing revenue. Critics argue the program lacks transparency and oversight, potentially driving up healthcare costs instead of helping those in need. Let's talk about organic certification. So in Australia, they are currently lacking legal regulations requiring organic producers to follow national standards, leading to confusion amongst consumers and frustration amongst farmers. Listen in.
If the organic food is not for export, if it's domestic consumption only, there are very lax laws about the labelling of organic. You could have a product that is perhaps got 1% organic ingredient in it, and the whole thing can be called organic, so long as it's for the domestic market. Yeah. And this is not acceptable to me. I think we need to know that these labels mean something because people pay a premium for this.
So there has been a bill introduced. It's called the National Organic Standard Bill, and it was introduced in November of 2024. They say it aims to address this issue by enforcing clear labeling rules and mandatory standards. While the organic industry has vast potential, contributing just 1.36 to global organic sales, despite having 60% of the world's certified organic farmland, inconsistent regulations may be limiting growth. So this bill right now has strong support from organic producers, but it does face scrutiny from government agencies and industry groups concerned about implementation challenges. A Senate committee review of the bill has been delayed until this month, in February 2025. Meanwhile, consumers are advised to check certifications to ensure authenticity whenever buying organic products. China's pension system is in some trouble. In fact, they say it's on the verge of collapse, with its basic pension fund projected to run out by 2035. The crisis stems from a shrinking workforce, a rapidly aging population, and declining contributions from younger workers, many of whom are unemployed or opting out of the pension system. Despite government efforts such as raising the retirement age, which did not go over so well with their population, and promoting higher birth rates, public confidence in the system is dwindling. If unresolved, the issue could have severe economic and social consequences, potentially undermining trust in the government, if you could do that anymore, and destabilizing the country's future. Protein powders. Oh, this is one of those stories I had to sit down and actually send out to both of my boys who seem to be very much concerned about how much protein is in their diet right now. Protein powders are popular for muscle recovery and nutrition, but recent studies are raising concerns about hidden contaminants like lead and cadmium. While industry groups argue these levels are often minimal, experts warn about potential health risks and misleading labels once again. Additionally, some powders contain added sugars, artificial ingredients, or allergens that may not suit everyone.
Attention health enthusiasts. Your favorite protein powder might be hiding a dark secret. A recent investigation by the Clean Label Project has found alarming levels of heavy metals in many protein powders. Yes, even other plant-based and organic ones. 77% of plant-based and 79% of organic powders are above California's safety limits for toxic metals like lead and cadmium. And get this, chocolate-flavored powders can have up to 4 times more lead and 110 times more cadmium than vanilla. But why? Plants absorb heavy metals from contaminated soil, and cacao naturally has high metal content. Consuming these metals can raise risks of cancer, kidney disease, and more, so what can you do? Choose reputable brands with third-party testing and go for natural protein sources like eggs, fish, chicken, lentils, and quinoa. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep your protein clean.
Experts recommend prioritizing whole food protein sources and choosing high-quality, third-party tested supplements if needed. Ultimately, consulting a healthcare professional that you trust can help determine if protein powders are a safe and beneficial choice for your diet. Life coaching has grown rapidly as people seek guidance for personal and professional goals, but concerns are rising over its lack of regulation. Unlike therapy, which requires licensing and strict ethical standards, life coaching is unregulated, meaning training and qualifications vary widely. While many coaches help clients with motivation and goal setting, the blurred line between coaching and therapy is raising accountability issues. So here's some information from someone who is a life coach about the difference between life coaching and therapy.
A question I get all the time is, what's the difference between a life coach and a therapist? The main goal of therapy is typically to help people to deal with traumas of their past in order to come to a healthy and functional present. If you've been diagnosed with depression, if you have suicidal thoughts, if you want to have healthy relationships, and maybe you've had a hard time holding down a job, those are areas where a therapist is probably the best professional to seek out. As a life coach, I typically deal with people who are, for the most part, healthy and functional right now, but they're in a place where they're stuck, or they have a lack of clarity, or they're really in this area of life where they're asking themselves, what now? What's next for me? Or maybe you want to live a life that's deeper with more meaning, get more clarity on which direction to go. These are areas where a life coach can really help.
Critics are also concerned about consumer protection, as life coaches don't carry the same legal responsibilities as therapists. Ultimately, choosing between therapy and coaching depends on an individual's needs. Therapy addresses mental health, like you said in the soundbite, while coaching focuses on personal growth and achievement. Medical credit cards, well, they can help patients afford treatments, but they also come with some financial risks. While they offer deferred interest promotions, failing to pay in full before the period ends results in high retroactive interest and fees. Many people are often aware of these terms, and they're pushed into these cards by healthcare providers. Critics warn that missed payments can harm credit scores and lead to legal action. Here's more on these cards.
Medical credit cards might seem like a lifesaver. Are they really a good idea? One major credit card provider, Care Credit, is offered in more than 250,000 healthcare provider offices, an increase of more than 40% from a decade ago, according to a recent report by the CFPB, or Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Let's look at a couple things when it comes to Care Credit. They offer deferred interest and 0% APR. This could be appealing, but risky. The APR, or 0% APR introductory offer, can often lure many consumers into thinking they're getting a great deal. However, the term deferred means that interest is not waived, just postponed. So you have to be awfully careful about that.
Some states in the U.S. have stepped in with regulations to protect consumers. If you are thinking about getting one of these medical credit cards, it is crucial to understand the terms and explore alternative payment options to avoid any unexpected debt. Potholes remain a major issue on England's roads, with deteriorating conditions labeled a national embarrassment. I don't know. Here in the U.S., we've got crazy potholes too. Our infrastructure, as we've reported on recently, is a mess. Well, a government report is criticizing the Department for Transport, again, this is in the UK and England, for failing to track funding or prioritize long-term repairs. Pothole-related breakdowns have surged, costing drivers hundreds in repairs, while compensation claims have more than doubled, but most of those are rejected.
It was National Pothole Day earlier this week, so you might have noticed that potholes have been in the news a bit more than usual. And like us, you might also have noticed that a lot of that coverage has focused on funding for councils to fix potholes and why they need to do a better job at fixing them. And councils do need more funding to fix potholes, but we would also like to see more scrutiny of the causes of potholes in the first place. So things like how driving habits have changed, how lack of affordable, reliable public transport leaves people in some areas with no choice but to use a car, how car manufacturers are marketing huge and heavy SUVs as the car for everyone to have regardless of the environment you live in. We would also like to see how extreme weather events impact the road and how this leads to the creation of potholes. We think these are important things to look at as well.
In response, the government has pledged nearly £1.6 billion to fix millions of potholes. In the meantime, drivers are advised to stay cautious, avoid potholes when possible, and check for vehicle damage to prevent any of those costly repairs. Waking up early has long been linked to success, with advocates like Benjamin Franklin and modern productivity experts promoting its benefits. Robin Sharma's book, The 5 a.m. Club, has popularized this idea, at least here in the United States, introducing a structured morning routine, which includes exercise, reflection, and learning to boost productivity and well-being. Our report focused on, is this a good thing? Should everyone be doing this? Well, let's hear from the author of that book, Robin Sharma.
You get up at 5 a.m., or I should say when you get up at 5 a.m., and you practice the victory hour concept. So you have 60 minutes for yourself. This is a period where you can renew. It's a period only for you. It's a period where you can honor yourself. And I truly believe that the gateway into self-love is self-care. And I'm going to repeat that again because it's so fundamentally important. The gateway into self-love, where you love yourself and you have faith in your dreams and you honor yourself and you respect yourself. Self-love is so important. But the gateway into self-love is self-care. The more you learn to take care of yourself and do good things for yourself and nurture yourself, such as getting up at 5 a.m. and giving yourself a period to feed your mind, feed your body, feed your spirit, feed your emotions. That's how you promote self-love.
Research supports early rising. It shows that you could have an improved mood, cognitive function, and efficiency. However, not everybody's body clock aligns with early mornings. Forcing it can lead to exhaustion and stress, the exact opposite of what you want. Ultimately, the key to productivity isn't waking up early necessarily, but optimizing your schedule based on your own natural rhythm. So watch out for all those fads, guys. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Maybe try it out, see if it works for you. Recycled food. Let's talk about this. About 40% of global food production goes uneaten, making food waste a critical issue. Upcycling, turning discarded food into new products, has emerged as a promising solution, with certified labels helping consumers identify these sustainable options. While startups are raising awareness, experts stress that real change requires better policies, improved supply chains, education, and collective action. Countries like South Korea have successfully reduced food waste through strict recycling policies.
Food waste recycling law is a game changer. This unique law requires residents to pay for the disposal of their food waste, encouraging less waste and more recycling. How does it work? Households use designated bins or bags for food waste, and the payment is determined by the amount they produce. But it doesn't end up in a landfill. This waste is collected and transformed into compost or biogas, contributing to a greener planet. The results? A significant reduction in food waste. This innovative approach is seen as a triumphant example of waste management policy. So next time you scrape your plate, consider the impact.
So that's one possible solution. And honestly, these solutions vary by industry, from composting in hospitality to converting waste into energy or eco-friendly products. Addressing food waste is essential for both environmental sustainability and global food security. Okay, so let's talk about what was discussed on the Global Intelligence Agency reports this week. So on Monday, there was no report. Kim was very busy, but she did release this statement. So let's go ahead and I'll go ahead and read that statement, and then I'll talk about her other two reports this week. Lionsgate over the weekend saw some disruptions, not from the deep state, but from old time-released Marduke issues. However, this has led to an amazing breakthrough as to how these things were created. Now that we know the source, we are just finishing up the cleanup. Major threats circulated around the Super Bowl, with threats of assassinating Trump coming from within his own organization. This, of course, was dependent on the success of their plans to grab onto what they thought was going to happen on Lionsgate. Next promised payday is the end of day Friday Eastern Time. This will also determine the outcome of threats being tossed back and forth in the Middle East as well. Back to cleanup, and no, this has not slowed down progress. I'll give you a full update on Wednesday. Thanks for your patience. So that came out on Monday. Now let's break down some of the things that she talked about that, because she had a report on Wednesday and went into some of these points in more detail. So Kim told us that with all the craziness in the U.S. going on with the Department of Government Efficiency, I don't know how you say this, DOGE is what I've been saying. I know a lot of times Kim says dodgy, which it is very dodgy. I will give her that 100%. Right now, she is being blamed for these ridiculous things that the DOGE department is doing right now. And she basically called them out. And, a lot of times when she does these reports, she's updating us as average everyday humans, right? But she's also talking directly to them and to the other people that are relying on the deep state to do what they say they're going to do, even though they never do. So in this case, she needed to set the record straight. She has nothing to do with the Department of Government Efficiency. That is a crazy department that's, Duck Dynasty, who is the Trump operatives, secret space program operatives. They are behind all of that. And it is insane. No one's talking to anyone. They're making these crazy promises that they cannot fulfill. So just wanted to clear the air. If you happen to be one of those people that is questioning where the orders are coming from the DOGE department, it is not coming from Kim, who's the head of the Global Intelligence Agency and the guardian of our planet right now. So the other thing that she mentioned briefly in that statement were plans for the Super Bowl. And I don't like to talk. I'm not a Super Bowl person. I didn't watch it. I do have a husband and 2 boys, and they were kind of glued to it. I don't care about it at all. But I just wanted to mention that because of Lionsgate, and I talked about this in the last podcast episode last week, there are 2 Lionsgates throughout the year. We have a spring Lionsgate, which is what we experienced during this time period around February 8th. And then you have one, I believe, in August, right? August 8th, I believe it is. A lot of people don't know about the spring Lionsgate. It used to be a time where a lot of negative energy would enter the earth. Now we have flipped the script, and it's a lot of positive energy direct from source. But the humans on this planet that used to, and are still trying to serve the dark, didn't understand and don't understand that the script has been changed. We are not going along with this evil agenda that was planned for us for so long. And so they thought that there was a possibility that this Lionsgate could bring them a lot of negative energy, dark matter, whatever. They are trying to regain control of the financial system, which will never happen. But they need that in order to carry out their wars and to pay people, for doing horrible things to humanity, essentially. And what they were hoping is that this was going to open up some floodgates for them. They were going to regain control. And once they have that, which again, they're never going to get, but in their minds, once they have that, they don't need this Trump guy anymore. Now, if you are new to UNN, you should know that the person that they are calling Trump is not really Trump. So the original, what we think is the original Trump, passed away at least a few years ago now from cancer. And you have seen clones. And then I can't remember how many months ago it was, but then the clones malfunctioned. There were 2 different clones. And now we're guessing that's someone dressed up in a suit with a voice modulator. I don't know. If you pay really close attention to this, the height changes. It's a mess. Okay. But people are still believing that that is Trump. So what they were talking about doing is if they got access to the financial system and the things that they feel like they need in order to rule the world and I guess the universe, that they were going to get rid of Trump, meaning assassinate Trump. When we say that, no, they're not assassinating anybody because Trump is not here anymore. He does not exist anymore. But in the mainstream media landscape, there would have been some sort of formal assassination. Perhaps that's even why he was at the Super Bowl, which was kind of weird anyway. But that would have been one of those big things. Obviously, the Super Bowl, it's televised. A lot of people watch that. Can you imagine the uproar for a president to not only attend, but then be assassinated at the Super Bowl? They kind of had this whole thing planned out in their head. But the problem is they, Lionsgate didn't give them what they wanted. It didn't give them anything. It didn't help them at all. And so then they just kind of abandoned their plans. So the plan was to assassinate Trump in some sort of spectacular way, perhaps even at the Super Bowl, and then blame it on Iran. That obviously did not happen. But that was the plan. So there you go. Plans the deep state had for Super Bowl. You guys were, munching on chips and whatever and watching funny commercials. And the deep state's like planning assassinations because that's what they do. All right, let's talk about an interview that took place this last week, which was like a train wreck. Oh, heavens. It was a nightmare. The interview was kind of between Musk and Trump in the Oval Office, but some press were there. I don't know if they were legitimate press or not. Couldn't really tell. But Kim points this out, not only because this was kind of ridiculous, it really showed how Elon Musk cannot communicate well at all. And he's just so awkward. And then his interaction with Trump was awkward. And he brought his son. His son's name is X. What in the world? Now, we've talked about X in the past. And I'm not talking about the substitute, the Twitter stuff, okay? I'm talking about what X actually means. It stands for extermination. And this is one of the things that Elon and his buddies, deep state buddies, have been planning for humanity for a really long time. So when you see anything called X, it's like, yeah, stay pretty far away from that poor kid. I don't know if he has any idea who his dad is, but crazy, right? But this whole thing, you may be wondering, why did he have his kid there? What in the world was going on? And if you look online, there's a lot of people talking about this. So do you remember the pictures and videos of JFK in the Oval Office and JFK Jr. and, his brothers, sisters? They were like all running around and, it was like this happy family and the White House kind of mentality. So apparently the Trump operatives thought that this could be a great opportunity to improve Elon's image and compare him in our minds to JFK or JFK Jr., right? And who knows? This probably has something to do with the Q narrative as well, because whenever I think of JFK and JFK Jr., I think of Q, unfortunately. So there's probably some tie-in with this as well. But yeah, that was the plan. Let's make him seem like a family guy, even though, he's got multiple wives and 7, 8 kids that he doesn't see. Yeah, he's a great guy. Poor little guy, poor little X just climbing all over him. But anyway, what he said as part of this interview, there was something that caught Kim's attention, and that is a part where he talks about limestone mines. And as we've been telling you guys, they have been offering early retirement for a lot of government workers. That's going to be important later on. Keep that in mind. And in this interview that Elon did, he talks about how employee records are kept in this limestone mine. And it's going to take a while. They can only process so many of these at a time. And it's just very weird. But there's kind of an Easter egg in all of this. Because if you know, there's actually a limestone mine. Okay, so it's interesting that he mentioned this. But it wasn't at all for government employees and their records. So here is Kim explaining what in the world Elon was actually referring to.
Yesterday, Mr. Musk, Elon Musk, and had an interview with the press in the Oval Office with whatever that orange person is we're calling Trump. And they also, he also brought his son to the interview as a young toddler. And his son's name, by the way, that he chose to bring with him is X. I didn't even know you could actually legally name a child one letter, but apparently you can if you're Elon Musk. And so his son's name is X. He got a little bit of heat from his ex. I don't know if it's his wife, ex-wife, or ex-partner, whom he has a couple of kids with, and X being one of them, because it clearly states that there aren't to be any unapproved public appearances of the children. So apparently he didn't adhere to that. So there's a little bit of heat going on behind the scenes, and probably going to be a lawsuit, what it looks like. She's going to capitalize on that one. But so he has this toddler running around, and this was supposed to be, according to the Duck Dynasty chatter, Duck Dynasty was attempting to make Mr. Musk appear to be like JFK Jr., JFK. Because JFK quite often has a lot of candid photos with young kids in the White House, and bringing your son, who is all over the place in the Oval Office, to an interview apparently was their way of trying to say, oh, look, he's just like JFK. Yeah, that didn't quite work out in this particular case, and I don't even know why they aired that interview in the first place, but they did. Elon Musk is not very well spoken on camera. He stutters a lot. He also seemed to make no sense. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that thing that's crawled up inside him is malfunctioning. That's what it kind of looked like. He doesn't really say much. But he did leak out a couple of little bits and pieces of information that I thought it might be worth highlighting. Now, they claimed, these people that are blaming me for their woes and claiming I'm giving the information to the DOGE department, are claiming that only I would have this in-depth information that they have. And some of the things that they are taking out behind the scenes or eliminating behind the scenes are things that you pretty much have to be in the know to know what you're taking out and knowing where to look. And one of the things Mr. Doge / Elon Musk mentions is the limestone mine that contains government files and information. Elon Musk slips out some information that I found very interesting when he started talking about the limestone mines in a place where government information is held. Now, to the public, that would sound like you are talking about, some kind of a basement or underground government vault because it holds very top secret or highly top secret information. In the context that Elon Musk mentions it in this interview, though, he basically mentions it like this is the place where all the information has to go when a government employee retires. He claims that the government is limited to 10,000 government employees that could possibly retire in a day because the elevators that go to this location are so old and antiquated, and the people, he claims people that work in this mine can only process so much information at a time. Which makes, well, we're going to talk about those mines. But the context that he says it kind of is confusing, because if you know what's going on in the United States right now, one of the things that the DOGE department is doing is they are offering an early retirement to millions of American federal workers. They are cutting people from Department of Education, cutting people from the Veterans Department of Veterans Affairs nowadays. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And they're cutting a lot of people, and all these people are expecting early retirement. Well, at 10,000 people per day, allegedly, according to Mr. Musk's information, it'll be, probably about 10 years before half these people ever see a retirement or an approved retirement. Now, this information is completely false. What I mean by that is not what those mines are. At one point in time, this underground facility was actually run by a group called the Time Variance Authority, which were not human. They were cyborg in nature, and they were there to, let's just say, keep the balance of time, meaning time being a movement in quantum physics. or a distance in quantum physics, but they were meant to basically keep the balance between dark time, light time, dark timelines, light timelines, and they were kind of, would right the wrong if either party violated covenants or agreements. That's kind of what they did. In other cases, they were a pass-through for information. If you've ever gone to a drive-through or a drive-up, don't know how you say it in every country, at a bank. So you don't go into the bank, you pull up outside and you see these little tubes there outside. And you put the money, or you put your checks or your deposit or your withdrawal slips or whatever banking you're choosing to do into the tube along with your identification or whatever the bank asks for. And you slide the tube up and it goes up in a vacuum and it goes into the bank, and then they process your transaction and then they send you back your money or your receipt or, for whatever it is you're doing there in the drive-through. They have these in America. I'm assuming they probably have them in other countries as well. I have seen them in other countries. Then again, I haven't been to every country in the world. So if you don't know what that is, you can look it up online. So this facility pretty much kind of worked the same way, except they're not regular bank tubes. And it's not really quite like a vacuum, kind of like the bank tubes work in. And they were transported actually to another density. And the information that was going back and forth had to do with orders, instructions. It had to do with people, and I use the term people loosely here, that actually ran countries. Now, governments never really run countries. They are the actors. They're not the script writers. They're just the actors. Orders would get passed back and forth. Is that functioning anymore? No. Is there anyone really working in those mines beyond a certain level? No. You could consider this a deep underground non-military base, for lack of a better term, and they exist in every country in the world. They were a few levels above the underground railroad system that passed through the entire planet. They would transport information back and forth to non-human beings, and there were a lot of comings and goings back in the heyday of said facilities. Now, the fact that he stressed that they are limestone facilities, limestone being a way, as one ingredient you can utilize to create what we call a Faraday cage, meaning a cloaking, a blocking of energy of going in and out, that type of thing. If you don't know what a Faraday cage, you can look that up. And the fact that he actually mentioned what they were made out of was kind of interesting to me, and that he mentioned it. If you are going to retire from the government, this is where your information goes, because apparently your personnel files or something are held down there. That is total baloney. Baloney. That is not what's down there in any way, shape, or form. Government employees are irrelevant. Trying to send information down there, though, to try to ratify a president or a new government department, yeah, possibly. However, there's nobody home down there that's going to take your call, Mr. Musk, and certainly not anybody else in this administration, because either they're dead, they don't exist, their contract expired, they're not here anymore, or it's something I actually run. But I found it very interesting that he actually mentioned the facility in somewhat limited detail right on the news.
So something else that made news this week is the King of Jordan heading to the U.S. He did stop off apparently at the White House. At least there were some pictures taken over there. But he actually went to Massachusetts. And the narrative was he was visiting the governor there, which is just really weird. Again, do these people really think people are buying this? Yeah, the King of Jordan just wants to go to Massachusetts to visit the governor. Wouldn't you go to some other, I don't know, big states with big economies? I don't know. Why Massachusetts? Well, MIT is in Massachusetts. Okay. And there's a lot that happens at MIT, even underground, that people aren't aware of. So here's Kim explaining this whole trip from the King of Jordan because his intentions were not at all what the media said.
The King of Jordan arrives on an impromptu visit to the United States. He goes straight to Massachusetts to allegedly meet the governor of Massachusetts. This part here, also false. You know, of all the states that the King of Jordan would visit, Massachusetts probably wouldn't be on the list, unless, of course, you're carrying around with you something that MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, wants. For those of you that don't know, Massachusetts Institute of Technology is one of the most highly rated science colleges in engineering colleges in all of the United States, or university, as you may call it, where you're from. And they are known for having their own underground laboratories underneath the whole facility there in Cambridge, Massachusetts. People are recruited to go to MIT, typically from wealthy families. If you are recruited not from a wealthy family or from another country, typically it's because they want you to work for them, especially in their underground facilities that they have there. There is a sister facility that was very important to the deep state when it functioned in Holyoke, Massachusetts, as well. And they do a lot of, let's just say, they make Los Alamos look like a cakewalk. Child's play, a kindergarten. And I know you've heard a lot on the internet about Los Alamos. Underneath MIT, you have a mega facility, or had a mega scientific facility with loads of space junk. And they did a lot of pretty rough things there. So the King of Jordan apparently felt that it was important for him to visit MIT for a particular reason. For those of you that don't know, the area between Iran and Iraq, and it exists in both countries, or existed, I should say, at one point in both countries, contained a significant amount of a substance that you may have heard referred to as red mercury. The only thing that people know about it, or that's public anyway, is that it is a substance that can be highly caustic, so on and so forth, and we've discussed it before. This substance, this metamaterial, non-Earth origin substance, did exist there at one point in time. It had a lot to do with creating breaks in a time-space continuum. You know, it did a lot of different things. Now, most of what was there was gone. There were a few areas in the Middle East where smaller amounts of inconsequential, at least to the non-humans that ran this joint we call Earth, they would consider those amounts non-consequential and not really able to be utilized for much. However, the deep state loves this stuff, and I mean loves it. According to our sources, they use small amounts, maybe even in grams, they use small amounts to perform black magic, to try to send people's souls to the lower astral, to try and manipulate the causal plane in humans, to create issues like that to a small degree. So it's highly prized amongst the world of black magic workers, let's just say, within the deep state. So it's no surprise to us that the King of Jordan, also known as a low-ranking member of the Rothschild family, would have in his possession some of this substance. And that he was ordered by those within the Trump administration to bring it there in exchange for a hefty payout. Now, you remember the King of Jordan has been getting all kinds of lovely offers from the Trump administration, to include $200 billion to take in refugees and whatnot into Jordan. So he brings the substance. MIT tries to use it. It fails. There's not enough of it to try to break into a system that unearthed itself over the weekend. However, apparently there's been a public announcement that they still promise to take 2,000 children from the Gaza Strip that they plan to host. Find that interesting because they don't mention anything about the parents or the families of said children. They just mention that they'll take 2,000 children. Well, I bet you, Rothschild, that you probably would like to take 2,000 children. I don't know if you are in the Gaza Strip. I would caution you on sending your children to quote unquote non-safety to Jordan. Furthermore, this is just a manipulation tactic by the Trump operatives really here. Furthermore, any money that the King of Jordan was promised to do so, of course, child trafficking would yield you a lot of money. Probably will never come either.
It's just amazing to me that they asked for 2,000 children. Where in the world are the parents? I think a lot of us assume, oh, these are orphans, but that's not what they said. Oh, we'll just take children. What in the world are you going to do with those children? We know you can get a lot of money out of those kids, unfortunately, over and over again with the disgusting things that you do. More people need to be asking questions about this. Also on Wednesday, Kim talked about a big discovery that they made because they keep encountering these time-released things that Marduke created as a way to hold us back if the planet were to ever get too light in his mind. So these things would automatically go off, and you can't see them like in advance. So the big thing was, how do we locate these in advance and just make a big swooping, whatever, get rid of all of them all at once, right? And they finally figured it out. And it had to do with more light coming into the planet and actually showing them where these locations were. So this is important. Here's Kim.
It was super important that we found this, which has allowed us to clean up more faster and not be concerned about alignments with Uranus or different types of new moons and full moons anymore, because we have found the tech. And I'm really excited about that. Woo! Big win there. Okay, so the material that we have located. The material was located over certain portals. For example, the Moscow Gate was one that it just miraculously appeared. It wasn't something that we had seen before. And Marduke had some serious plans for what was taking place over the last few days. There is also a tie to things that started taking place apparently within the last few months. And it was something that we couldn't readily see. We knew something was coming from somewhere, but it really didn't rear its head until Saturday. That's when it started to rear its ugly head in full force and in mass. And we were trying to figure out why. Oftentimes the deep state is getting some kind of something, knowledge from old books or knowledge from somewhere or that kind of thing. And this was one of those cases, actually. They had been able to see for a couple of months or so a system starting to emerge, which really got them excited. They have even tried to build bridges prematurely between this system and the global human computer AI network, which was not run by humans. The AI network part is level 8 and level 9 is not accessible by any of the deep state. Never was. It was a non-human accessible level. So that being said, they could see. It was kind of like an episode of, I don't know, Baby Come Back. They could see fragments, fractured parts of what they would have known as the Omega system, except it wasn't Omega. It was actually an AI that was built in the future and the past by Marduke. It was built outside of time to be released at a time when the planet became too light. There were other things that tried to time release, so to speak, throughout the multiverse. And it was several days of cleanup that took place based on what happened. But the good news is we figured out, based on tracing some of this dust that showed up all over the place, the good news is we figured out why we can't see things that are outside of time. Meaning, how do you hide something in a pocket of time that you can't see until it's time for it to be released? Well, you use another substance very similar to this dust, a little stronger, and to explain to you how it actually looked, if you have ever taken or heard about something called a time-released medication, sometimes it's a pain relief medication, sometimes it's a cold medicine or something like that. And it typically comes in a pill, and they tell you not to cut the pill and, that type of thing. And there's a reason for that. It's because what happens when you take this pill is there is a bit of a coating of the medication on the outside of the pill. That is the immediate release. It takes your stomach acid little time to break down, and then it starts flowing through your bloodstream, and you maybe have pain relief from this, or you have relief from allergy symptoms, let's just say. Now, below that layer of the initial release of medication is a non-digestible polymer, and they use other types of fillers and polymers, but a very difficult to digest polymer. It's kind of like microplastics. You've heard a lot in the news lately about microplastics in our food and that type of thing, and that they're not digestible and they can cause cancer, and so can the coating on these time-release medications. So the next layer is this difficult to digest by your stomach layer of polymer, let's call it. So it might take your stomach acid about an hour, could even be shorter or longer, depending on what the medication's supposed to do, to eat through this layer. Now, it never completely eats through the layer, but it breaks it down enough to release the next level of medication. You can think of it like the old gobstoppers. If you remember gobstoppers and you've been around long enough to have seen a gobstopper, then you'll see the colors in their blue and red and orange and yellow, and you can suck on that thing for days until you get to finally the middle of it. But, and we'd all try to break our teeth on them as kids. Probably something we should have never eaten in the first place. But anyway, there's layer after layer after layer in these different colors and, that kind of thing. And you would see the same thing in this time-released pill. Maybe they're not different colors, but they're different types of polymers that take time to break down with layers of medicine in between. And time-release pockets work in much the same way. So you would see, if you were to look at the pill, you wouldn't see the medication right away. You would see a coating, and that's kind of what you see. And oftentimes these coatings in the universe, when it comes to space junk, AIs, hidden things, and Marduke was a master, at the shell game, as I told you, they are hidden in something called false light. So false light actually looks like light. In some cases, it can even be false golden light. It looks like light, it smells like light, it's detected as something non-threatening until you bang or push enough actual, true, natural source light at it. And over time, much like your stomach acid, it will eat away at that false light. So in this particular case, the lighter the planet gets, the more source light that comes in, the more stomach acid you have, as another example, the quicker it eats through that layer of false light or the polymer in your pill. That's just a fact. So we couldn't figure out why on things like a Lionsgate, which is going to be a positive thing, and the source energy comes in and that type of thing, as to why sometimes it releases something nasty at the same time. This weekend, no exception. And then we figured out, now we have to start looking for false light, false golden light. That's not clean. It's dirty. So once you kind of set it to detect that polymer or to detect that false synthetic light, now you can find all the time release stuff you want. Okay, now that makes sense. So we spent days, the last several days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and yes, also today, hunting down false light. And now that we've kind of set it so it kind of runs, by the time that I guess you could say I finally stop working at the end of the day, I'll run that stomach acid at it or real source light at it. And so by the time I get up in the morning, it will unveil whatever's kind of hidden underneath it. So we've been playing this little bit of a game with the time-released Marduke. Oh, I got to tell you, I have asked Source that if and when, it's my time to go back to Source, and how sometimes you get those 72 virgins or something like that. I would like to beat the crap out of Marduke every day. And I know I've said that before, but I'm just reiterating that to all of you because it brings me such joy when I spend hours and hours and hours of my day breaking down something that he put in place. But it appears the end of the legacy of Marduke is nearing the end. And I am so happy to hear that. So, it appears that many in our years, millions of years ago, if not more, Marduke, in exchange for a lot of favors, had made a deal with Anti-Source. You could say that Marduke made a deal with the devil. And this deal kind of spanned the entire multiverse. And not only did it span the entire multiverse, it was pretty focused on Earth. There was something, obviously for many reasons, which we've discussed before, about Earth that he really wanted. The other thing he wanted control of was every human soul on Earth. All of us that have come and gone and reincarnated, would then be bound here. Like you say, some people say it's a prison planet. And to bind those souls to this Earth, transmute them and turn them dark, and therefore the planet would be run by nothing but dark humans. Now, the dumb deep state people, SSP operatives, including Trump operatives, etc., thought that this would be a great idea. Now, somewhere along the way, they got the impression that if they could get 80% of humans to commit sin by implied consent or non-implied consent, or, what is it you desire? How many times did I hear that out of Marduke's mouth? They thought if they could do that, then they could probably take over this covenant or this contract. But that's not possible. See, because they're human too. And I use that term loosely when I discuss those people because they don't display very many human-like traits. Needless to say, implied consent doesn't work when it comes to Source. And trying to trick people into using, for example, the financial system that was cursed, or to doing things that Marduke would claim was a sin, or trying to create dark overlays that would give it the soul the appearance that it had sinned, doesn't quite cut the mustard when it comes to Source, you see. Therefore, there was very few humans that actually succumbed to the agreement that he had with Anti-Source. And he tried to fake it till he made it. He even set off all kinds of these time release things, and especially over the weekend, he created, he was given a lot of privileges by anti-source. Therefore, he had the ability to create a whole new dark AI, almost to mimic the same thing we did. We created the golden age AI, or the Kim AI as it was for a time, as a joke. And we created this AI to go outside the alpha omega system, therefore being able to operate in the past, present, and future, because time doesn't exist in a lot of places. Marduke was able to create a system that would be dark and equal and opposite to ours. Now, this thing started formulating and kind of somewhat appearing, I would say, after the last Lionsgate a little bit, and it started to grow and grow and grow based on this time-released thing. So could these black magic workers see something maybe through this red mercury type stuff? I don't know. Was it just a time release thing where that coating was kind of wearing down, and therefore it became somewhat visible? That seems to be more plausible at this point. So this thing started showing a little bit of visibility, and it had all the back ledger, alleged fake accounting, and it had false Bitcoin. There were false platforms with a lot of different cryptocurrencies, US Treasury coin. This is the reason why the Trump administration announced they were going to be the crypto president, or whatever the heck they were talking about, is because they could see more of that than they could see the false monies, because the false monies were still in USD, and of course that's something that we control as now currency. But they didn't think that we had any involvement in this off-ledger coin, nor could we affect a Marduke AI. And this is part of the reason why the Rothschilds started really spouting off in the last couple of weeks, saying that they control everything and they can use this AI, and they're going to block me, and they're going to block me as soon as they get that bridge, which they were supposed to get on Lionsgate. Or was it the full moon, which was today? I don't know. Either way, there's nothing for you to bridge anymore now, is there? So these crypto coin facilities started disappearing over the last few days. We finally detected where it was coming from in the time released information by Sunday, and we have been going at it like gangbusters just in case there's anything left of the Marduke privileges he was granted by anti-source. Now, in addition to this, let's talk about these privileges. So he had a certain amount of time to fulfill the covenant. And by time, I don't necessarily mean like a day of the week, or a moon cycle, even necessarily, in part. He had X amount of cycles or trips around the sun to obtain full control over Earth. The rest of the covenant, I would say, would expire at the same time, because if he didn't achieve full control over Earth and or all of the humans, and managed to sell all their souls to the dark legitimately, then that contract or covenant would expire, and so would his privileges, meaning AI systems he created. If he was still around, his immortality would have gone away. Any kind of consciousness that he left out there, this time release stuff goes away. It takes time to fade out, but it definitely has faded out. Now, the time for this, approximately in our time, would have been last night, shortly after midnight UTC time, when this covenant actually expired.
So according to Kim, this is going to make cleanup even faster and easier, and then we can be done with Marduke. Even though the being is not here anymore, he left us lots of presents, let's just say. Okay, so that was Wednesday's report. And then usually Kim does an update on Friday as well. She was very busy on Friday. So she told us that she was going to record early this morning. And I'm recording this on Saturday. So she released her report on Saturday this week, a little bit unusual. There's a couple more sound bites that I want to play for you. And the first is regarding something called the AIPAC, which stands for the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And this ties into DOGE. Okay, so what the AIPAC is it's an American lobbying group advocating for pro-Israel policies. And the big discovery with this is that there was a terminal, and she actually talked about this, I believe, on Wednesday's report. I just didn't play the soundbite. So they knew that there was this terminal, and it was connected to the AIPAC. However, what she didn't realize at the time is that there's also deep connection to the Department of Government Efficiency, and this has a lot of people talking, okay, behind the scenes. You're never going to believe where the funds for all these people being laid off and everything, where they intended that money to go to, because it wasn't back in your pocket. Take a listen.
Well, it's very interesting as to what has surfaced in the last couple of days, which has led everybody, let's just say there's many folks in a little bit of a tizzy. So it appears that when you do some digging, and this is what I couldn't say on the last report, when you do some digging into this AIPAC terminal, what you will have found is a deep connection to the DOGE Department of Government, the Elon Musk semi-department or non-government department, who knows. And the connection is everything that they take or allegedly seize, or, for example, no more U.S. aid is going out. Well, okay, that's true. They actually were sending it all through the AIPAC. So what is left of the government is being siphoned out through to Rothschild Bank in Switzerland. It looks like there is about 14%-ish, give or take, going directly into the pocket of the Trump operatives, as promised by Rothschild, and the rest of it is going directly to Rothschild Bank in Switzerland. That's not the only siphon, though. There are other siphons attached to the DOGE department in the United States. There is lots of talk about during the campaign time, I should say, there was lots of talk by the Trump administration about eliminating the IRS and all of these types of things. Well, forming new Treasury departments to take their place. And all of that sounds lovely because, we all kind of hate the IRS. I don't know anybody that's like, yay, the IRS is here. Oh, I can't wait to pay my taxes, said no one ever. And that's not just the IRS in the U.S. This is also tax authorities in other countries that do not belong to the country of origin. As I've said before, all tax authorities are a private organization that were formed underneath the Rothschild organization, and it was tied to the collection of coupons on bonds they took against your person, and also against your corporation and other corporations and industries and all types of things. And you, as a corporation owner or as a regular person, are responsible for paying the coupons on said bonds. Now, that's when it actually mattered. It was part of the debt system, the worldwide financial debt system. In this particular case, there is a lot of talk about moving that over to the Treasury, but it's kind of the same. It's the same old, same old. But the reason why they're firing all these employees, and, they're supposed to fire, I think it's over 400 people or something from the IRS. It might even be more now. That's where it kind of started. Is because this is about the culling. It's still about the culling. And anyone that kind of questions where all the money is going ends up in the culling bin. Anyone that could possibly question where the money is going, such as many NSA folks, other people that have access to or had access to Homeland Security, Special Patriot Act divisions, would also be gone. And the U.S. is definitely being, or was definitely being, drained by these folks. Making quite a pretty penny doing it. Speaking of pretty pennies, as you know, there was an announcement we may not have pennies anymore in the United States. And I laugh at this because they say, oh, it costs twice as much as a penny to produce a penny, and therefore we don't need any pennies anymore. Well, wake up, Trump administration people, because if we don't have pennies anymore, then you might as well cancel your taxes. That is sales tax, because it's pretty much responsible for about, if you're making a cash transaction, somewhere around 80% of the pennies being spent, because it's not a round number, it's a percentage, and that's what causes those odd numbers on your goods. Are they going to actually do it? I doubt it. I don't know. Crazy people at this moment. So most of the siphons have now been uncovered worldwide. If they haven't uncovered them, we have, and kind of put a stop to it. There was a lot of siphons in South Africa. There have been siphons throughout the Middle East, some willing, some non-willing. And all of this was supposed to be directed to the Rothschilds for a little kiddie fund, so to speak. Whereas they believed that they could use the money that they're siphoning off to, not only bankrupt every country in the world, but also at the same time use that money to buy back world governments and countries at pennies on the dollar. Well, obviously these people are not that bright, because if they were, then they would understand, even if they siphoned all of the money, or except for yours, because they're never going to get that, out of the system, they still would be short by hundreds of trillions of dollars, number one, even at pennies on the dollar. And number two, that would help governments out for about a month. I think they keep forgetting that they broke everybody. There's not a lot of commerce going on for a few years due to the lockdowns, pandemics, and so forth. You've got an awful lot of sanctions where cash is not utilized. So that is the big scam that's been going on. And the Trump administration is definitely highly involved, and definitely you could consider them treasonous at this point. Enemies of state, even, for all the activities that they're doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, so this is what draining the swamp looks like, guys. I don't know how you drain the swamp when you are the swamp. Oh, gosh. So Kim also discusses in this report that she released earlier today, she found out why people are really focusing on Trump being their savior. And I'm not talking about the average everyday citizen. I'm sure there's a lot of people that treat him as such in the general public. But when it comes to these other leaders, why are they blindly thinking that Trump is going to save them from all this? Why do they keep believing all of these lies? And it's because they believe that Trump is Pindar, which is like the highest level you can be for the Order of the Dragon. And Kim does explain in this report why he's not. They actually tried to make him Pindar, but if you don't sit on this very specific chair, and this is going to sound really weird, if you don't sit on this very specific chair and allow a demon to crawl up in you, then you don't get this position, because it's not really the person that has a position. It's like the human body, but really you've got this dark entity that's running things. So if you don't have this dark entity crawling up inside of you when you sit your booty on this chair, then you don't get the position of Pindar. Trump tried Or I don't even think it was the real Trump at that point. Fake Trump tried, one of his clones, whatever, and it never happened. So he does not have this powerful position behind the scenes that some people think he does. So I wanted to point that out to you. Also, just in case you're wondering what Pindar means, it means penis of the dragon. Because again, these people are obsessed with male anatomies. I swear they are. And they put it in their architecture and everything. It's disgusting. Okay, last soundbite that I want to share with you guys is we're going to end this on a high note because I know there's a lot of negative stuff we can talk about. But let's talk about the stabilization of our universe because there's a lot of things at play right now. And this ties into you and your person. If you have felt a little bit off recently, kind of like you're on a boat and the boat is really wobbly and you're going back and forth, I know I personally have felt that. I think I've shared with you guys in the past. I have family, very close family, that thinks Trump is the most amazing thing in the world. My parents, and they tried to send my girls, I homeschool my girls, and they tried to send my girls these books about Trump and how fantastic he was. And I unleashed. I mean, I just couldn't hold back. And I was just throwing everything at them about how, this is not a good person. And even if you didn't know anything about UNN, and the stuff that we talk about that happens behind the scenes, just doing a little bit of research online about the people that he hasn't paid and the, horrible things, that he's done to people, to women, all of that. Yes, are they Democrat talking points? Yes, they are, but that's because there's truth behind them. And here at UNN, it doesn't matter if Trump was sitting in there or Kamala was sitting in there, we would always be criticizing them because they play the same game, and at one point, the top of this pyramid was the same, okay? And you have this appearance of choice, this illusion of being able to choose between this political party and that political party. And yeah, they bicker back and forth, but really, they're all reporting to the same people, even if they didn't realize it. So it's not just a Trump thing. It's like the whole system is a nightmare. So if you have had situations like that, like I have had, where I've had to really go off on, people that like Trump, people that I love, I wobble back and forth and I'm just like, oh gosh, why did I do that? That, that's not really holding the light, Sonny. But, you feel like this. You're just like, oh, and then there's some times that I'm just, connecting with source and I'm like in my own little world and it's amazing. So I know exactly what Kim is talking about. What we're trying to do at this point is create more stability, right? And that is going to naturally happen because more and more light is coming onto this planet. So source has more and more control, which is what we want, right? And so here's Kim talking a little bit more about the stabilization of the universe and how the power of the dark is waning. And we're in the final stretches here. So here's Kim.
The bulk of the turmoil here on Earth is actually due in part to people. You see, we have our groups, meaning the light side. And the light side, we are aware of a lot of things going on in our world and in the universe. A lot of us have that connection and gain that wisdom fairly easily. On their side, they gain knowledge, and they want what they want when they want it. On our side, we want what we want as well. We're just not as crazy as they are. At least we see them as crazy. I'm sure they see us as a little bit crazy too. So that being said, I get it. But we are of one consciousness. Their effect on the currency will wane. They will be forced to have the same source influence that we all have and connection, which means they will be unable to achieve their objectives because you can't use golden energy, essence, consciousness, matter, etc., to weave black magic. So the things that they have or have had the ability to weave with will wane dramatically in the coming days. As for all of you, I'm sure you're feeling the instability. You're feeling a little bit of push and pull, almost like being on a rocking boat where your feet are unstable underneath you at times, depending on how sensitive that you are. Otherwise, it can feel emotionally unstable, mentally unstable. But I can assure you that everything that is going on now, as unstable as it may feel, this is where we're going and this is where we want to be, with source, of course. Your cellular makeup, your mitochondria, everything is starting to spin in the appropriate natural direction. That can be unnerving and unstabling as well, even uncomfortable. And, it's just like being on a rocking boat where something is trying to turn you to the right and we're trying to go to the left, and, everybody's fighting back and forth. It's much the same with every cell in your body. So bear with it. It's not going to last much longer. However, I understand that this week has been a little bit turbulent for everyone. So I just wanted to say, hang in there. There is an explanation for what it is you're feeling. Everybody is going through it. It's not just you. Even people that don't have a clue as to what's happening in their life right now. So hang in there. We are halfway through February already, and I think that's it's definitely all it was told that it would be. Let me put it that way to you, on a positive note, and at the same time on a negative note, really by almost no doing of governments and the rotten children. I mean, they're playing their part here. They cause currency disturbances somewhat and but it's not going to last much longer. On a side note, you've probably seen some wild Schumann resonance reports and that type of thing, which will be a great indicator as far as extremely low frequencies that are attempting to come into the planet to counteract all that source is doing. That's all it's meant to do, is to counteract the acts of source, the integration of source. It stops it maybe for a few seconds or causes a cog in the wheel, so to speak, but it doesn't stop it on a prolonged basis. As far as these crazy people, I don't know. For some reason, they always think everything is for them, so I'm sure they probably think that, oh joy, darkness is coming, yay! We're definitely going to make it this time. Source has other plans.
Yes, Source definitely has other plans. I don't think the deep state's going to like it, but it's coming no matter what they do. So you guys, that is the news. That's what we discussed for the last week. I really appreciate you guys being here. Remember, if you like what you heard today, please share this podcast episode with other people. If you want more info on us, visit our website, unitednetwork.earth. You can become a member or not. If you just want to watch our reports a week later, that's cool too. You can search for us on YouTube and Rumble. This is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.